Imagine that I hand you a rusted shovel, an old wooden wheelbarrow, and a pair of horses that look like they've seen better days. And I look you in the eye and say, "Friend, you have exactly 2 years. Build me Rome." No, actually, do better. Build me a city that makes Athens, Babylon, and Rome look like cheap village barns. Oh, and I almost forgot. The winters here are brutal. The ground is a frozen swamp. We have no paved roads. Electricity is barely a science experiment. And cranes? They haven't really been invented yet. Your time starts now. Does that sound like the ravings of a madman? Absolutely. But if you open any official history textbook to the chapter on the Chicago World's Fair of 1893 or the St. Louis Exposition of 1904, historians with stone-cold faces will tell you that is exactly how it happened. We are led to believe that at the end of the 19th century, when most of the population still used kerosene lamps, went to the bathroom in outhouses, and traveled in creaking wagons, humanity suddenly, literally at the snap of a finger, erected hundreds of grandiose antique palaces, neoclassical giants, domes that rival St. Peter's Basilica. Why? To look at them for 6 months, eat some popcorn, and then blow them up with dynamite and burn them to the ground. Officially, they call these World's Fairs, but we call it the greatest act of concealment in the history of civilization. Today, we won't just look at pretty pictures. We are going to audit the books. We will break down the estimates, the impossible logistics, and those very archival photographs that the Smithsonian Institution would prefer to erase. We will prove that these cities were not built for exhibitions. They were found, dug out, restored, shown to the public as an achievement of modern progress, and then methodically destroyed so that no one would have time to ask the single most dangerous question in history. Who on earth built this for real? Welcome to the real 19th century. Fasten your seatbelts. Right now, we are going to break the stage sets. Let's start with the dry numbers, because numbers do not know how to lie, unlike the authors of your school textbooks. Chicago, 1893, the White City. The official version states, a territory of 690 acres was transformed from a wild, waterlogged swamp into a Venice of the future in less than 30 months. Think about the scale. 200 buildings, artificial lakes, canals, bridges, a dedicated railway system. The main building, the Manufactures and Liberal Arts Pavilion, its area, 30 acres. To help you realize this scale, you could fit the Great Pyramid of Giza inside it, and you would still have room to park a few dozen steam trains around the perimeter. The ceiling height? 200 feet, without a single supporting column in the center to hold that massive roof. And historians claim all this was built by workers with handsaws who traveled to the site on horse-drawn carts? Let's apply some cold logic. In the 1890s, there were no cargo trucks. None. Zero. Everything, absolutely everything, was delivered either by horses or by temporary narrow-gauge railroads. To build even one building of this volume out of stone, brick, and steel, millions of tons of materials are required. Imagine this logistical nightmare. Thousands of wagons hauling marble, steel, and glass 24 hours a day across an undeveloped swamp. Where are the photos of these traffic jams? Where are the mountains of construction waste, which are inevitable at such a scale? Where, finally, are the temporary cities for the 50,000 workers who were supposed to live, eat, and sleep there. They are not on the maps. They don't exist. Now, look at the photographs of these supposedly construction. It's ridiculous. We see majestic buildings already standing at full height, but they are simply surrounded by flimsy wooden scaffolding. Sometimes they show us a couple of men in bowler hats standing on a ladder painting something. This doesn't look like building a foundation. It looks like cosmetic repair. It looks as if they found ancient frameworks, washed them from centuries of dirt, that very mud flood layer, and are applying a fresh coat of paint before the guests arrive. And don't forget the climate. Chicago, the windy city. The winters there are so brutal that Lake Michigan freezes solid. How do you dig canals in frozen ground and pour foundations for palaces as tall as a modern skyscraper with only a pickaxe and muscle power? The official answer? They tried very hard and worked fast. You know, that's not an answer. That is an insult to any engineer who knows the price of stone.
Of course, official history has a universal excuse, a magic word that solves everything. Staff. No, not the employees. Staff is supposedly a special temporary material, a mixture of plaster, cement, and hemp fibers. They tell us, friends, calm down. It's not marble. These are just sticks and boards, smeared with plaster and painted to look like stone. They are just movie props. Sounds convenient, cheap and cheerful, like building a set for Hollywood. But let's look at the details. Look at the statue of the Republic in the center of the Grand Basin. Height, 65 feet, covered in gold leaf, perfect anatomical proportions. Look at the colonnades, at the complex molding, where every petal, every feather on the eagles is visible. Do you seriously want to convince us that 19th century sculptors created thousands of such masterpieces out of quick-drying plaster in a couple of months? Where is this army of artistic geniuses? Where are the receipts? Why aren't there names in the archives? And most importantly, physics. Plaster on a wooden frame, a Chicago winter, humidity from the lake, storm winds. Any builder will tell you, by spring, such a decoration would turn into mush. The plaster would soak, the wood would warp, and all this beauty would collapse under its own weight. But in the photos of the opening day, the buildings shine with blinding whiteness, not a single crack, not a single chip, as if they had stood there forever. And here is the juiciest fact. When the fairs closed, it was impossible to dismantle these temporary buildings. They had to be blown up with dynamite. Let me repeat that. Dynamite. Have you ever tried to blow up a shed made of boards and plaster with dynamite? You don't need TNT. You can knock it down with a sledgehammer. But in the archival footage of the demolition, we see not splinters. We see massive blocks of stone. We see complex steel frameworks designed for centuries of use. Why build a temporary pavilion with the strength of a military bunker? The answer is simple. The legend of staff was invented after the fact, so that you and I, looking at these photos in 2026, wouldn't ask, why do we build glass boxes today if 150 years ago, people with horses could build antique temples for pennies? They tell us it was a fake, but this fake looks more reliable and majestic than any modern Capitol building in America. Architecture is just the tip of the iceberg. Let's look inside the machine. The fairs were advertised as the triumph of electricity. Imagine an average farmer of that time. At home, he has a kerosene lamp or a tallow candle. And then he enters the Court of Honor in Chicago or the Paris Expo in 1900.
He sees paradise. Hundreds of thousands of light bulbs, giant searchlights cutting through the night sky for kilometers, fountains glowing from within with colored light. They tell us Nikola Tesla and Thomas Edison did this. But where did the energy come from? They show us huge, polished generators in the pavilions, beautiful machines. But where is the coal? To power such illumination, you need trainloads of coal every single day. You need giant boiler rooms and huge chimneys belching black smoke. Look at the panoramic photos of the fairs. The air is crystal clear, no smoke, no soot on the blindingly white walls. Maybe all these spires, domes, and strange metallic antennas on the roofs were not for beauty. We have already discussed atmospheric electricity on this channel. These buildings look like giant resonators, collecting energy directly from the ether. Light without wires, light without burning fuel. And it wasn't just light. At the Paris Exposition of 1900, there was a moving sidewalk, a wooden belt that transported thousands of people in a circle without noise or smoke. In 1900. And electric cars. There were hundreds of them at the fairs, silent, effective. And what happens next? The fair closes and the technologies vanish. The sidewalks are dismantled. Electric cars are declared unpromising, and noisy, smelly internal combustion engines are forced upon us. Free ether energy is replaced by wires, poles, and monthly bills. World's fairs were not about the future. They were about saying goodbye to the past. We were shown the remnants of the technologies of the old world, demonstrated how people could live, if not for the energy news. And then they closed the curtain.
And now, we come to the darkest question of all. What happened to these wonders of the world? If you built a city worth tens of millions of gold dollars, why not keep it? Universities, residential quarters, government buildings could have been housed there. It's ready-made infrastructure. But no. Almost every major fair ended in a catastrophe. Chicago burned in a giant fire. St. Louis blown up and burned. San Francisco destroyed. Brussels fire. The official version is always the same. Well, you see, a short circuit, a spark, plaster and wood, it caught like a match. How convenient, right? Fire is the perfect way to cover tracks. Fire melts metal, turns stone into dust, and hides the true structure of the walls. What could not burn was methodically crushed into rubble and dumped into the water. In Chicago, the rubble was simply dumped into Lake Michigan. In other cities, it was used to fill in lowlands. It was a total territory cleanup. But something survived. In St. Louis, they left one building, the Palace of Fine Arts. Today, it houses an art museum. And surprise, it is stone, massive. It has stood for 120 years and shows no sign of falling apart. They tell us, oh well, this building was specifically built permanent to protect valuable paintings from fire. Wait. So you knew how to build from stone, so that the building looks exactly like its plaster neighbors. Or maybe they were all stone. Maybe demolishing stone palaces is just long and expensive. It's easier to say they burned, and then bring in the machinery and level everything to the ground. Think about the insane waste. Spending national budgets on a temporary city only to destroy it 6 months later? No businessman,
No politician in their right mind would ever do that. This is not about economics. This is about ideology. These antique cities reminded us of who we really are. We entered these buildings and felt like Lilliputians in a house of giants. The scale of these doors, these halls, was designed for another civilization, for the Titans. Therefore, the cities had to vanish.
And finally, the most disturbing chapter. While tourists were admiring the domes, down on the midway, there was an exhibit that makes the blood run cold. Incubators with living infants. Rows of glass boxes. Inside them, premature babies. We are told this was a medical demonstration, a way to save lives. But where were the parents? Why were thousands of babies, without mothers or fathers, displayed next to the bearded lady and the circus performers? This coincides perfectly with the era of the orphan trains. From 1850 to 1930, vast numbers of foundlings were transported from East Coast cities to the Midwest. Children with no memory of their past, sent to repopulate these newly built cities. Could it be that the fairs were also distribution centers? A place to process the new population, to give them a fake history, show them the achievements of their new masters, and then burn the evidence of the previous owners. We are a civilization of amnesiacs, and the world's fairs were the place where our memory was erased. In 1893, humanity was shown a dream, a beautiful, bright hallucination of progress. They told us, look at what we have achieved.
But the bitter truth is, we are not the creators of these cities. We are looters, squatting on the ruins of a great empire. We simply entered empty houses, washed the facades, threw a 6-month party, and then destroyed the evidence. World's fairs are not a triumph of science. They are a crime scene. And this crime has witnesses. These are the photographs where impossible buildings are frozen in time. These are the blueprints that do not match reality. It is our intuition whispering to us, something is wrong here. They erased the cities. They rewrote the books. But they cannot erase our curiosity. The next time you see a photo of Chicago or Paris at the turn of the century, do not believe the captions. Look at the stones. Ask the questions. Remember, history is just a version of events that the winners agreed upon. But you and I, we never signed that contract. We continue to seek the truth.